In which case, Warner Brothers are easily the best publisher to ever have existed.
Johnbonne, I've got a job to go to. I'll see you later. Have a good one.
Oi! Ranger! You think you could just suck a Bond's review and walk away? Gah!
Not since Crash Bandicoot 2 and 3 have I felt a game has so much to offer. I mean, in those games you could just go after the crystals, but then there were also gems and hidden warp rooms to unlock. And in the third game there were time trials which had their own progression path. That's fairly impressive for a platform game if I'm honest. But that was in 1997, and it wouldn't be until another 17 years later that I get such joy from knowing that there was always something else to look forward to in a single game. Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor delivers on so many levels, and in so many ways.
I'm never without my Uruks, you fool! They run to the sound of my horn! We'll overwhelm ya!
And that's amazing considering it's a hybrid of Assassin's Creed and the Batman Arkham games, two series I really can't get into even if my life depended on it. To say that the game isn't similar would be the ramblings of someone completely and utterly delusional, but that doesn't mean that being those two games has to be a bad thing. On the contrary, it instead improves vastly on the formulas of old. Instead of Assassin's Creed, I can play Shadow of Mordor and have stealth feel like a necessary and rewarding part of the game, and I can climb anything as opposed to obvious markers of what I can and can't latch onto. And while Batman Arkham's combat is already perfect, which is why so many games have adopted it in the past decade, Shadow of Mordor adds its own innovations to make sure you're well equipped for the challenges ahead, even if some of those innovations exist only to make the game pathetically easy. So again, it's Arkham Knight and AC Brotherhood. Not only that, but the story is too familiar to Batman's own, or really any tragic comic book hero. In fact, it's more like the Punisher. But anyway, you play as a ranger of Gondor named Talion. Your family, friends and home have been destroyed by the ever-growing forces of Sauron, and it's up to you to strike fear into the hearts of your enemies and avenge those who have been slain by the Uruk. Equal as important to your quest is your literal soulmate, whose identity I shan't spoil. Talion is saved from death by an elven wraith who believes their bodies and fates are tied together. Not only does our knife-eared ally earn us the name of Gravewalker, giving us the ability to respawn, but also uses ancient tree people magic to do some serious damage.
So essentially we have Crash Twinsanity with the physical and magical combat of Dante's Inferno. Now if that doesn't sound like Game of the Year to you, I don't know what will!
So what I've talked about so far I've only briefly touched upon, so from now on whenever I talk about a subject I'll have to stick to it, although that'll probably change in the next review. Anyway, you're on a mission to defeat the Dark Lord Sauron, or at the very least deliver a blow that'll allow Middle-earth to recover from the Green Menace, the Orcs. To do this you'll need to work on your own initiative, as the story missions will only get you so far. Because you don't just keep doing missions over and over until the game's finished, oh no. If anything, the story is just a tutorial for new abilities and then help establish characters better. This may sound off-putting, but in actual fact it helps the game and adds more reason as to why the game should be set in an open world. So how do you progress the game? It all revolves around sabotaging Sauron's hierarchy by assassinating orcs and later making them betray each other. This feature is known as the Nemesis system. Throughout Mordor are captains, each with their own names, weapons of choice, strengths and weaknesses, and their own pivotal role in Mordor's fate. The captains are mostly found in encampments and strongholds, pushing human slaves around or patrolling their surroundings. You can engage in a fight with them where they'll taunt you in melee range and call their buddies to help out, and if you die but return or they retreat from the fight, they'll remember that encounter for the next time you meet.
Maybe this time I'll tie you down to stop you running.
And this is by far one of the most clever features I've seen in a video game, permanent scarring to the captains. Say if you manage to toast one of these guys, if they live to fight another day you'll see them with horrifying burn marks, or if they've been mauled by a Caragor they'll appear with claw marks on their body and armour. Their appearances also reflect their great deeds, ranks, titles and weapons, so it's easy to see what you're up against at a glance. Hunters tend to have armour made of bone, assassins tend to have hoods and shiv-like weapons, and torturers tend to have weapons that bleed or poison. This makes every encounter with the captains unique, and requires you to change your approach with every fight. That's not all though. If you die to a lowly orc soldier, they'll be promoted to the rank of captain, and that's where you can really get immersed in Mordor. Going after the one that put you in the ground and became stronger because of that gives you your own personal quest, rather than just killing Uruks because they're Uruks. You big racist. Death is easily avoided though, especially as you become more powerful. When your health is fully depleted, there's a last stand mechanic that allows you to get up. If you successfully beat the quick time event, you only get 1 or 2 chances at this per battle, so you may find yourself retreating a lot, and if that means that an orc isn't getting his stripes, so be it. Talion has more than enough to stop the green menaces. He has the use of 4 weapons. One is sword. Now this one's fairly simple, it's used for melee combat when you're not being sneaky deaky. Your second tool is the dagger, a broken sword. This can be used to shank enemies you've grabbed or to stealth kill a motherfucker. The other 2 tools are courtesy of the Wraith. In combat, Talion can momentarily infuse himself with the Wraith, allowing him to stun enemies with the Wraith Punch or whatever it's called, as well as slow down time and use a bow to take out enemies with Elf Shot. As tacked on as the archery might feel, I really enjoyed using it, and marksmanship was essential for many of my stealthy operations. The combat can be button mashy, but with purchasable upgrades you can make fluid fights a lot more rewarding. You'll find critical hits with well-timed attacks and certain combos to make fights a lot more interesting to watch and play, as well as be more rewarding. As long as you remember to roll and counter attacks, you should be, for the most part, fine. Speaking of such upgrades, Talion has 2 means of improving his performance. The first is experience points, gained from defeating enemies, liberating pockets of slaves, doing things creatively, and completing quests and side content. Fairly basic stuff, but by killing captains you unlock a resource called Power, which allows more abilities to be unlocked with each tier. Some abilities like Poison and Brand can only be unlocked during a particular quest, but at least you don't have to spend skill points on them when they appear. You can spend your skill points, rewarded by XP, on abilities that improve Talion and the Wraith's power for both combat and stealth. All 3 of your material weapons can be improved with brands, which provide buffs to different styles of play. These are found above the corpses of slain captains and are randomly generated, so what they provide and how good the chance of the buff proccing differ each time. They're a neat addition, but I only really needed them for the bow. As I used range attacks a lot, I like the weapon imbuements to provide a chance of recovering focus and elf shot per headshot kill and so on. You can also buy more slots for the weapon buffs, which is easily gained from side quests. And for some reason, side quests have really improved in open world games recently. I mean, I love them in Watch_Dogs, and I found them to be a joy in Shadow of Mordor. You can improve your weapons' aesthetics and discover the lore behind them by completing challenges specific to those items, which test various skills that involve them. If you're looking for the harder stuff in the game, don't miss out on these. Captains are also tied to side quests, as they might be recruiting, hunting, or attending a feast, so in case you don't want to search a particular area for the Uruk, you can find them at a quest. Depending on if they live through the encounter, they'll grow in power, and the same goes for your own Uruks. There's also a bonus for players who stay online. If you die to any Uruk, they can appear in someone else's game and vice versa. Vendetta side missions are your usual stuff, but with the added novelty that this is an Uruk that you've not yet seen, and you get the rewards for killing it too. Pretty nifty, if somewhat pointless. Before I move on, I really must talk about this feature, which sadly isn't available until the second zone of the game. There's a quest where you unlock the ability to brand orcs with the Wraith's power. This allows you to control them, making branded Uruk turn against hostile ones at the click of a button. But there's more. If you brand a captain, you can turn them against other captains, grow their power levels during events, and make them bodyguards for war chiefs, and then make them betray their masters. That's right, you can make the runt of the litter into the most powerful orc in Sauron's army, and it's absolutely brilliant. Or should I say, fist-fantastic! There is just one problem. You won't kill orcs again. You can, but you won't. Because who doesn't want an army of orcs eager to maim in the name of the Grave Walker? When you've branded all the available captains and none of them die, there's no new ones appearing, so you'll be forced to kill them again if you want new foes to face. Which is kinda pants. And that's the only issue I have with Shadow of Mordor. It takes commitment to make the game difficult the more you play. I'd only played for 5 hours before I realised this, but I wasn't going to stop upgrading my character or using my sword just because the balance was poor. You can still have fun, but it's a shame that enemies don't quite catch up to the player's own skill. Difficulty isn't the only requirement to make a game fun, and Middle-earth is brimming with things to do. If you get joy from the well-polished stealth, you'll be able to rack up plenty of experience while navigating the open world. With hunting challenges, you'll be killing and learning about the native beasts, and with herbalist challenges, you'll be encouraged to top up your health by gathering rare medicinal plants. Adding to the lore also are items in the world that the Wraith can examine. You may find items from centuries past that shed some light on Dwarven, human, Elven and Uruk culture, and by finding a hidden memory point on them you'll get an additional audio log talking about them. And there's also some kind of glowing wall thingies, I don't know what they do. It's similar to that door in the Mines of Moria and the big octopus attacks the Fellowship of the Ring. Yeah.
It's time now to review The Colour of Blood and the Bellowing Roar of Uruks, with my thoughts on the visuals and the sound design.
Shadow of Mordor is a really nice looking game, even on the mix of medium-high settings I'm running it on. What few things I found unappealing are minor gripes. The thickness of the mud, the griminess of the skin, the torrential downpours of rain can practically be smelt and tasted as you hack and slash your way through Middle-earth. It's a game where I had to stop and look, perhaps in disgust at the horrifying effects of Sauron's magics. The animations are a little off in places, especially when the game goes into slow motion during executions or when you're identifying a target, but when you're in combat, you get to see some of the most graceful and brutal fights you'll ever see in a video game. An additional note has to be the motion capture. Gollum's could be a lot better, and saying that he's in this game isn't a spoiler, don't worry, but it does a lot of good for Talion and the Wraith when they interact in cutscenes, as well as how they transition from one form to another. Speaking of the characters, the voice acting is as good as I expected. It's hard to blame the actors when they're given some corny and crudely written lines, but they also give an admirable and often believable performance, as well as add life to the mostly two-dimensional cast. I score the voice acting a Thorin out of 10.
Before we poke the eye of Sauron and end this review, it's time to put an Uruk out of his misery with my final thoughts.
I honestly don't know what else to add. I mean, it's just a fist-fantastic game that I struggle to find flaw with. It packs in so much content and you feel like you're spending ages going through it all when in actual fact, or rather, according to Steam, you've only spent a couple of hours with it. It's like going to and returning from Narnia, you've only gone through the wardrobe for a few seconds. As I speak, I've played through the game 3 times and I'm yet to get bored, or at the very least find a flaw that should put you off. If you like open world games, this is for you. If you like third person stealth, this is for you. If you like melee combat, this is for you. If you like hunky blokes who press X to kiss their wives, this is for you. This side content may seem a little tacky, especially when you're running out of captains and war chiefs to kill or skill points to invest, so I guess that's an inevitable problem that will occur at some point. Still, you won't finish the game without having a lot of energy and love left over. Without a shadow of a doubt, if you want my opinion, I can easily recommend the game, but the DLC I've yet to try. If you want to buy the game from Steam, it's the Game of the Year edition containing most, if not all, of the DLC. As mine's the retail of this version, I've not got any of that content, but maybe I'll review it. I know for a fact I'll play it at some point.
Until the next time, I'm Johnbonne Iron Tom, your #1 source for #2 games. Now, excuse me, I'm gonna catch me a ranger! Praise be Gork and Mork! I mean Sauron! Ta-ta for now!